Alright folks, we're back, and now it's time to start the show with my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the gaming forecast. So let's see what's coming out between the week of February 5th to the 11th. Okay, on the 9th, you have just one game coming out, Mercenaries Lament, Silver Wolf and the Seven Stars of the Maiden, releasing exclusively in Japan for Nintendo Switch. Then on February 10th, you have just one game coming out, Hogwarts Legacy for Windows, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. And that was your gaming forecast. Yep, just 2 days and 2 games. That's all. Again, there's nothing really there that catches my interest. I'm not really interested in Hogwarts Legacy. Look, I like the Harry Potter books, but I'm not really into the franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of the things where I enjoy it, but I'm not like a diehard fan who has to play every friggin' game or watch every movie or TV series or whatever the fuck. So, anyway, if there's anything there that catches your fancy, please let me know down below. Also, if you like any of the music in this week's episode, links are in the description. And with that being said, let's move on to our first topic. Alright, so for our first story, we've got to talk about Uncharted. So recently, because of the Last of Us TV series, Neil Druckmann's been doing a lot of the media rounds lately, and I talked about this in previous episodes when he's talked about the series and such. And recently he was interviewed by BuzzFeed, and during the interview they asked him about the idea of a third Last of Us game. Well, he not only discussed Last of Us, he also discussed Uncharted, and he basically outright confirmed that that Uncharted is over. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. During the interview, during this section, he was talking about how with Sony, basically, there's no pressure for them to make a sequel. It's basically up to them. And he said, and I quote, "That's not the case. For us, Uncharted was insanely successful. Uncharted 4 was one of our best-selling games, and we're able to put our final brushstroke on that story and say that we're done. We're moving on." So, there you have it, folks. The adventures of Nathan Drake are officially over. And you know what? It's bittersweet. Because on one hand, okay, the Uncharted series, look, I admit, it took me a while for me to warm up to the series, but eventually I really enjoyed the trilogy. However, it's also good news because it means that Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann can't fuck up the series anymore. Okay? Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Uncharted 4 was dog shit. I don't know what the fuck happened. I think it mostly had to do with the fact that they got rid of Amy Hennig, which I know she just left, but we all know that basically she was forced out by Druckmann, you know, male feminist that he is. Uncharted 4 was dog shit. Then they tried to do a spin-off, and that was terrible as well. So yeah, obviously Uncharted under Druckmann has been absolutely terrible, and so I'm glad to see that they're not going to further fuck up the franchise anymore. Okay? It sucks that we're not going to get any more Uncharted, but it's also good that they can't fuck it up. It's pretty much the same way I feel about Jak and Daxter, because like I love the Jak and Daxter games. They're fantastic 3D platformers. But at the same time, I'm glad Naughty Dog isn't making any more because, well, have you ever seen the concept art for Jak 4? Yeah, it was, so basically, I think, when was this? Like 2014, 2015, they released The Art of Naughty Dog. It was a whole art book on the history of Naughty Dog. And they actually had a section of unrealized concepts and such, and one of them was Jak 4. And their idea for Jak 4 was totally different from previous games in the series. It would have had a much more realistic graphic style. So the more cartoonish style of Jak and Daxter, gone. Okay? Like, I don't know why the fuck they decided to go with this, but I'm glad they didn't go forward with it. I'm kind of glad that they went with The Last of Us instead, because, my God, this would have sucked ass. Especially when you consider the fact that this is around the same time that Sly Cooper 4 was in development. So it's like, wait a minute, Sly Cooper gets to keep his art style, but Jak and Daxter doesn't? What the fuck is up with that? So, yeah, I'm glad to see that Uncharted is over, mostly because I don't want Naughty Dog to fuck up the franchise any further. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and next up, we've got to talk about the Xbox and Bethesda Developer Direct that premiered last week. And some very interesting stuff was, of course, shown off. First off, we had Mojang showing off Minecraft Legends, which is this strategy game. I'm not going to lie, actually it looks pretty good. I mean, it's Minecraft, so you expect it to look like Minecraft. But gameplay-wise, it actually looks very interesting. It's a very standard strategy game. But yeah, it looks all right. It's not really something, though, that I don't think I'm really going to be going for it, because to me, Minecraft is not something I'm really deep into. You know, I've always been very much the comfy Minecraft player. You know, I like to play casually. So I'm not really, like, you'll never see me online in that game, okay? So I'm not really sure if I'm going to be interested in playing this one. But that's going to be coming out on April 18th. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out. We then also got our look from Turn 10 Studios, where they talked about Forza Motorsport. That's right. Apparently they're developing a new Forza game, and outside of that, we know very little about it. Like, we know they're working on it. They showed off some gameplay footage, and it's just simply called Forza Motorsport. There's no release date or anything. All we know is that it's in development. So next up, we then get Tango Gameworks. And they announced a brand new game called Hi-Fi Rush. And here's the thing, okay? It's very interesting, because basically it's a cel-shaded brawler rhythm game. That's I think that's the only way I could really describe it, is that it has rhythm gameplay, but it's like a brawler. It's like a Devil May Cry sort of Bayonetta sort of game. It's very interesting. Graphically, it's impressive. It's a cel-shaded game. And you know what it reminds me of? It's very much, it reminds me of like Jet Set Radio. And I know I'm not the only one who's made this comparison, but it looks like something from like the early days of the Xbox. You know, something like you would, like again, Jet Set Radio Future, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, because there was a lot of games in that era that really pushed cel shading. We don't really see cel shading a lot, so I'm glad to see that a game sort of return to that art style, and it looks like a fun game. Not gonna lie, so I might go check that out myself. It seems very interesting, and of course, it's being produced by Shinji Mikami, the father of Resident Evil, so you know it's gonna be good. Alright, next up, they then had an update for Elder Scrolls Online, announcing a brand new DLC chapter called Necrom, which will also introduce a brand new class called Arcanus, who uses the magic of Hermaeus Mora. You remember from the Dragonborn DLC from Skyrim? Yeah, he's back. So, and it appears that the whole storyline is going to center around him. So, if you're interested in that, there you go. And then lastly, we had an update on Redfall, which really just showed more gameplay footage and talked about a bit more of the mechanics. And honestly, like, look, here's the thing, okay? The game, like, graphically, it looks all right, but the gameplay is kind of bland, because what is it? It's a multiplayer co-op shooter. There's 50 billion of those in gaming, okay? I don't think we needed any more of them, and it's just kind of like, it's like, it looks all right, but it's just very bland. It doesn't really make me want to play it. And that's going to be coming out on May 2nd, of this year, and that was the Xbox Bethesda Developer Direct. A lot of the stuff we already knew about, like we knew that there's going to be updates to certain games, but that was basically it. The only game that actually really catches my interest is Hi-Fi Rush, and everything else is just kind of, I take it or leave it. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Dear PlayStation, I've been playing Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, but my girlfriend won't stop watching because she thinks it's a movie.
This is pretty common, Jason. I mean, just look at this game.
You know, you got Nathan Drake's epic gunfights.
Impossible escape scenes and a plotline filled with betrayal. Give her an hour or so, she'll know it's a video game.
It's been 2 days.
Ready, honey?
Yeah!
Yeah, I'm gonna file this under not an issue.
Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Rated T for teen. PS3, now $2.99.
PlayStation.
I don't understand what's going on here.
I'll say it again. I said it, I'll say it again. I said it, I'll say it again. I said it before, I said it before, I said it before, I said it before, I said it, I said it.
I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand. I'll say it again. Say it again. Say it again. I don't understand. I'll say it again. I don't understand. I'll say it again. I'll say it again. I said it. I don't understand here.
I felt like a boonga butterfly. Felt like a boonga.
It's so easy.
Felt like a boonga. Felt like I felt like a
It's so
Somebody got it.
felt like a butterfly. Felt like a butterfly. Felt like a butterfly. I felt like a butterfly.
I don't understand.
I felt like a butterfly. I said it.
I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand. I'll say it again. I don't understand. I'll say it again. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand. I'll say it again. Again. I don't understand what's going on.
Bingo.
I felt like a
I don't understand. I'll say it again. I don't understand. I'll say it again. I said it. I don't understand what's going on here.
All right, folks, we're back, and first up on our next round of stories, we've got to talk about the Microsoft FTC lawsuit, because it appears they've officially subpoenaed Sony. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And we're not talking the FTC. We're talking Microsoft. Yes, they served Sony Interactive Entertainment with a subpoena on January 17th with a response date of January 20th. However, it appears that that deadline had been moved up by 1 week to the 27th. Now, obviously, of course, it is no longer the 27th, but we have no word on whether or not Sony has actually responded to this. This is so that they could basically have to appear in court, and in order for Microsoft to build their defense against the FTC. So now it appears that there's one part of the subpoena that a lot of people are kind of misinterpreting, and it's towards the bottom. It says, and I quote, "Negotiations between SIE and Microsoft as to the scope of SIE's production and discovery schedule are ongoing." Now, a lot of people seem to believe that this is about their game production, but in reality, it's all about legal documentation. So I just want to point that out there. Tom Warren, who is the senior editor at The Verge, he pointed this out on Twitter. So, props to him for kind of explaining that distinction. Because the thing is, understand this. Most people have no understanding of legal documentation, including myself. I am not a lawyer. I do not understand most of this shit. All I understand is that Microsoft is subpoenaing Sony to appear in court over their lawsuit. That's all I know. I don't understand any of the finer details of this. But wait, there's more, because it appears that Microsoft is accusing Sony of misleading the EU. That's right. According to Frank X. Shaw, who is the current lead communications for Microsoft, he put out a thread on Twitter. It's just four tweets. "I hear Sony is briefing people in Brussels, claiming Microsoft is unwilling to offer them parity for Call of Duty if we acquire Activision. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've been clear. We've offered Sony a 10-year deal to give them parity on timing, content, features, quality, playability, and any other aspect of the game. We've also said we're happy to make this enforceable through a contract, regulatory agreements, or other means. Sony is the console market leader, and it would defy business logic for us to exclude PlayStation gamers from the Call of Duty ecosystem. Our goal is to bring Call of Duty and other games, as we did with Minecraft, to more people around the world so they can play them where and how they want." End quote. And you know what? That actually kind of lines up with what they did with Nintendo, because Microsoft offered Nintendo a 10-year deal for Call of Duty. So it stands to reason that they would do the same with Sony. So I don't doubt that, but you know what? Let me tell you something. This is getting pretty crazy. Like, you know, I've seen a lot of crazy shit between console makers, whether it's between Sega, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox. This is the craziest I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen one console maker subpoena another console maker. Like, that just never happens. So it's getting pretty wild, and you know, this lawsuit's going to be it's going to be entertaining to watch. So we're just going to have to wait and see what exactly happens. But anyway, until then, let's move on to our next topic. All right, next up, we've got to talk about Pokemon, but not the video games, rather the card game, because it's been announced that a Pokemon that hasn't been seen in over 20 years is finally making a return to the card game. That's right, the Pokemon Company recently confirmed that their upcoming Pokemon Card 151 set, which will be releasing on June 16th, will in fact have Kadabra in it for the first time in over 20 years. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is it that they haven't put out Kadabra in over 20 years? Well, it has to do with a magician named Uri Geller. He's this illusionist who's best known for bending spoons. And apparently in 2000, he actually sued the Pokemon Company, claiming that Kadabra was based on his likeness. Now, as you all know, Kadabra, of course, holds a spoon, as does his evolution Alakazam. But the thing is, his Japanese name is Yungera, which sounds similar to Uri Geller. So, of course, he accused them of stealing his likeness, and starting in 2002, Kadabra has not appeared on any Pokemon cards. Ever. In fact, for some reason, Pokemon, they came up with a bullshit excuse so that Abra can evolve into Alakazam without going to Kadabra. However, back in the end of 2020, he had a change of heart, and so he sent a letter to the Pokemon Company relinquishing his control of Kadabra and allowing them to reuse the character. Now, but here's the thing that gets me. You know, the fact that technically the Pokemon Company never stopped using Kadabra. Only on the card game. In the video games, however, no, they continued using the character. I mean, he appeared in the 3DS and the DS games and even the Switch games. So, I don't know, like, I'm wondering if his lawsuit only involved the card games, because apparently he found out about this because whenever he performed in Japan, he had a whole bunch of fans that would hand him the Kadabra cards to sign. So I'm wondering if he kind of like only thought like, oh, this is only in the card game, and not realize that no, Kadabra's also in the video games as well. Anyway, well, he relinquished control of the characters, so now they could just do whatever they want with them. So anyway, let's move on to our next story. All right, and next up, we've got to talk about Hogwarts Legacy again. Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, the discourse on this game is still going on. And apparently, one of the largest gaming forums has officially banned all mention of it. And of course, I'm referring to ResetEra. Yeah, I know, I'm not surprised either. So apparently they put up a thread where one of the general manager, B-Dubs, posted a single post, locked the thread, saying, and I quote, "Official staff communication. After continued internal discussion, we began to start outlining the issues put forth by Rowling in the game in question, and each time, and as we discussed it all, we kept coming back to the simple fact that Rowling is not only a bigot, but is actively pushing, in her position as a wealthy and famous individual, for legislation that will hurt trans people. That she uses the influence and money gained from her success with Harry Potter to push transphobic legislation. Therefore, the mod team has decided to expand our prior ban on promotion for the Hogwarts game to include the game itself. There will be no OT and no discussion of this game. As a reminder, we do not allow for advocating or meta commentary on content ban decisions, which are decided by the mod team. Any that we see, whether for or against, will be met with thread bans at a minimum. Now, once again, I'm not surprised that they're banning the game, considering ResetEra is, they're very ban happy. They love kind of waving that ban hammer on literally anyone and anything. But here's the thing, okay? I understand that there's a lot of people who don't agree with J.K. Rowling, and that's totally fine. Like, it's okay to disagree with someone. But I think to a ban discussion of a game that she did not have any direct involvement on. Yes, it's a Harry Potter game. Yes, she created the series. And yes, she will be getting a cut of the money. But understand that she did not personally create the game. Okay? I don't even think she wrote it. Hold on a second. Yeah, no, she didn't. In fact, she, other than the fact that she created Harry Potter, she actually has no involvement in this game at all. So, again, I think attacking the game developers or banning mention of their game is a bit unfair, especially if they don't even personally agree with J.K. Rowling. There's a chance that there might be a couple of people on the development staff who don't agree with J.K. Rowling. They love the series, they love the lore and the world building, but they're just not, they don't agree with her, you know? And I think it's a bit unfair to hold them up, to basically blame them for her opinions, you know? It's like this, okay? I don't agree with Koichi Sugiyama, okay? However, just because I don't agree with him doesn't mean that I'm going to punish the rest of the development staff of the Dragon Quest series. That's just ridiculous. They don't deserve to be punished just because I disagree with one of their opinions. And that's the way I see this. They're punishing a bunch of game developers for the opinions of someone completely different. But on the flip side, this might actually be a good idea, because if ResetEra can't discuss the game, then they can't discuss any harassment campaigns against the game developers. You know, like, remember, I think it was when Catherine, when they re-released it for like the PS4 and the Xbox One, okay? ResetEra tried to carry out a harassment campaign against the creator of the series because of the character Rin. So, you know what? Maybe it's a good thing that they can't mention the game, because then they can't, you know, actually try to harass the developers. So, it sucks on one hand, but on the other hand, there might actually be some benefits to it. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Game Boy Advance.
だいたい裁判をゲームにすること自体不謹慎です。
逃げあり。面白ければ良いのではないでしょうか。
だからといって無罪を勝ち取るゲームなんていうのはありえない。
逃げあり。面白ければ良いのではないでしょうか。
静粛に。
求めるのはただ一つの真実。矛盾をついて無罪を勝ち取れ。逆転裁判2。
面白いから良いでしょう。
All right, folks, and we're back. And first up in our last round of stories, we've got to talk about E3. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, as you all know, later this year, E3 will be returning for the first time in, like, what, 2 years or so? Because the last one was 2021, and they skipped out on last year because of COVID worries. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, it's coming back this year. But it appears that it might be a little empty, because according to IGN, neither Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony will be there. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. So last week, Xbox announced that they will be hosting their summer showcase in LA around the same time as E3. And so IGN asked him about it, and he said that they were timing the event around the same time as E3 to make it more convenient for the press and consumers. Well, according to IGN, Microsoft isn't the only one that won't be appearing at E3. According to their own report, from sources within the industry, neither Nintendo nor Sony will be at E3. Now, understand that none of this is actually confirmed. This is all just rumors from supposed sources. IGN reached out to representatives from Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft and the ESA, but none of them have returned their request for comment at time. But it wouldn't be surprising, because in the past, I do remember when Sony skipped out on E3 2019. Of course, the following year, 2020, they didn't return, but I think they returned for 2021, and then last year they didn't have it. So yeah, it's very much possible, but again, nothing has been outright confirmed. And I've always had this feeling like there's been this push away from E3, and a lot of that is, well, because of the fact that a lot of these companies no longer need these massive press conferences to announce games. Like, it was understandable, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Okay, well, E3 isn't that old yet. It's got like 2 years until it hits 30. But, you know what I mean. Back in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, it was kind of understandable why E3 existed. Okay? But with the internet being what it is today, and the fact that a lot of information you can get directly from these companies, it's kind of not necessary anymore. And I think that's why Nintendo kind of skipped out on doing press conferences years ago. I remember back in, I think it was 2013, they announced that they were just going to be doing directs from now on. And I remember that kind of caused a bit of a controversy and a discussion as to whether or not E3 has lost its purpose, so I think that's what this is. I think, if anything, what we are seeing is, or what we have been seeing for the past 10 years is the slow decline of E3, and I think eventually it will be phased out. Because again, a lot of these companies, they can just simply do their own directs, and it will be a whole lot cheaper to do than doing a massive press conference and having a whole show floor with all these giant screens and such. Like, if you ever seen like a lot of the old E3 stuffs, it got pretty friggin' crazy. There were years where basically the event had to tell the companies to tone things down because it was getting pretty out of control. So, yeah, I think what we're seeing is the decline of E3. I might be wrong, and it is kind of sad because E3 was always kind of that magical time in gaming when every gamer gathered around and just to hear what sort of games were being announced, and now it's kind of like being phased away. It is what it is. It's going the way of the gaming magazine. It's sad to see, but it is what it is. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next topic. All right, and next up, speaking of Microsoft, we've got to talk about the Xbox 360 marketplace. Now, why are we talking about the 360? Well, because if Microsoft has officially confirmed that some titles will in fact be start being removed from the marketplace. That's right. So according to their website, they said starting February 7th, some games will start removing some games. It's going to take a while to actually go through most of them. But now it's different for every single region. So I'm going to leave a link in the description, and I'd say go look up your region and what country you are, and that'll tell you what it is. But for the United States, the following games include Aegis Wing, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed 3, 4, Liberation HD, Blood of the Werewolf, Blue Dragon, Breakdown, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Call of Duty Ghosts, Castle Crashers, Cloning Clyde, Counter-Strike Go, Dark Souls, Darksiders 2, Daytona USA, Defense Grid, Eats Chowdown, Far Cry 2, Final Fight Double Impact, Iron Brigade, Jeremy McGrath's Off-Road, Jet Set Radio, Left 4 Dead 2, Limbo, Lost Odyssey, Mass Effect 2, Monopoly Deal, Mutant Blobs Attack, N+, Outpost Caloxy X, Peggle 2, Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds, Prince of Persia, Ruse, Sega Vintage Collection, Alex Kidd & Company, Skate 2, South Park The Stick of Truth, Spelunky, Splinter Cell Conviction, Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars KOTOR 2, The Orange Box, The Raven Episode 1, and The Witcher 2. Some of these aren't just the games, it also includes DLC. So if you don't have any of the DLC for these games, once again, go and try to download them right now. Folks, do I really need to say it? Do I? Yeah, this is why I always tell you that you should fear an all-digital future, because eventually they're going to start removing games. And this is I think this is only the beginning. You're going to start them seeing basically shutting down the 360's marketplace. Okay, until eventually you can't get anything on there. Hell, didn't they? I think they shut down the indie marketplace already. But that happened quite a while ago. I can't remember when. I do have some of these games, so I'm going to try to see if I could download the DLC before eventually it shuts down. And I recommend you do the same thing too. And by the way, also reminds me, remember that at the end of March, the 3DS and Wii U market eShops will shut down as well. So once again, download as many games as you possibly can. Download all of your DLCs, because once those stores go, that's it. You're done. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. All right, and for our last story, I want to talk about the Dead Space remake for a bit. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard about this, but apparently the remake has a new feature where whenever there's something bad that's going to happen in a cutscene or whatever, or one of the audio logs, it will put out a content warning that will explain to you what's coming up in that scene or audio log. So, for example, one of the screenshots I saw mentioned psychological manipulation and medical malpractice. Now, the media has been covering this, and the way they've been, it's kind of weird. They're covering it as if everyone is offended, everyone is outraged over this, but that's farther from the truth. Okay, no one is offended by this. No one's outraged. In fact, most of the reactions I've seen to it are either complete apathy or this is stupid. Why are you putting this in a horror game? You know what I mean? And of course, there's been a huge debate about it and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing, okay? Yes, and before anyone brings it up, I am very well aware that these are optional, okay? I understand that that's optional. However, I think it's just kind of stupid and pointless. You know, because here's the thing, okay? Dead Space is a horror game. The whole point is to scare you. You know, it's in the name. Dead. Hell, it's even on the box art of the original game where they actually had a severed hand floating in space. So this idea of, well, we need content warnings to warn people about the content that's in these games, I think it's a bit ridiculous, because if you're playing a horror game, you should expect this stuff. You know, people didn't play Resident Evil 2 and were surprised it had zombies in it. And just so we're clear, I'm talking about the original PS1 Resident Evil 2. They didn't have to be surprised by that, because guess what? There's a fucking zombie on the cover of it. You know, and just beyond the cover, there's also the rating on these games, okay? For example, I actually pulled out my copies of Dead Space. Okay? They all are rated M, and they all have the exact same rating. Blood and gore, intense violence, strong language. It gives you a basic idea of the type of content that's in the game. Now, of course, it's not going to tell you specifically what's going to happen in each scene. It's not going to be like, oh, well, this character dies at this part and this character dies at that part. No, because one, they have a small space to put that stuff on, and it would take forever for them to explain it. And on top of that, they would be spoiling the rest of the game. You basically would look at that and be like, okay, well then there's no reason for me to play it because I know who dies and I know who lives. Like, if you're looking into Dead Space and you're wondering, gee, I wonder if this will trigger some memories, well then maybe you should be paying attention to the ESRB rating. Maybe you should look at what type of content is in there. Because I don't like this idea of we have to coddle everyone, we have to appeal to everyone. Because here's the thing, okay? We live on a planet of 7.8 billion people. You're not going to be able to appeal to everyone and to everyone's sensibilities, all right? And the thing is, okay, because of that, there's a wide variety of games to play. No one's forcing you to play the Dead Space remake. You can play a whole bunch of other games that don't mention any of the content that's in Dead Space. And yet you have people who are like, well, we have to placate to them. Look, like I said, it's horrible that, you know, that they get triggered by memories of past trauma, but at the same time, it's not up to the developers to coddle them. Okay? If you don't want to play a game that has that type of content, then don't play a game that has that type of content. No one's putting a gun against your head and forcing you to play the game. I know you see the trending tab and you see all your friends talking about it, but just because you see that doesn't mean you actually have to play it. I think the problem is you have a lot of people with a fear of missing out. They see a lot of people talk about a game and they're like, oh, I need to play that. And it's like, you don't have to, like, just because everyone's talking about one game does not mean you need to play it. You know, there's a lot of games that I missed out at launch that I played much later on. Didn't bother me, okay? It's not going to harm you or anything like that. It's okay to miss out on some things. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Not every man is Superman. Not every woman can have it all. But for everyone that's ever longed for more, your time has come. When something in life is missing, E4All is there. The E4All Expo delivers the cutting edge of the video gaming world. October 18th through the 21st. Power up and play.
Alright folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember, if you like any of the music in this week's episode, links are in the description. There is also a playlist of past music called Single Player Radio, so go check that out. And with that being said, I'll see you next week, and remember to keep gaming.